Today I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Wallach and his story. Welcome to the Prosperity RX podcast. This is Pharmacist Keith with your prescription for prosperity. This is a podcast where I give you hope. I show you the path toward building a life of peace and prosperity, to build a life that you don't need a vacation from. If you're willing to own up to it, to accept that you do have the power to change your circumstances, and that you're willing to do what it takes, then this podcast is for you. You truly can change your life and start on the true path toward financial peace and prosperity. W. Clement Stone, in his book, The Success System That Never Fails, said, if you cannot save money, the seed of success is not in you. So let's get on with the show. Hello, folks. My name is Keith Abel. I am a pharmacist and a holistic health coach, and I want to welcome you to this call today. Before we get started, I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about my story. I can relate to a lot of what it is that you folks are going through. You know, some of the same struggles that you're going through right now, I've been through. Now, I've been a pharmacist now for 25 years, and for most of that time, I put in 60 and 70 hours a week on the job. And my biggest frustration came from the fact that the only way to make more income was to work more hours. I was the second leading immunizer in my district for the company. I did all that extra work, but did it generate any increase in pay for me? No. I ran the medication therapy management program for 4 different stores. Did the extra revenue that I generated for my company through the medication management program create any extra income for me? No. It didn't even give me any extra tech help. In fact, despite all the revenue that I was generating for the company, when they started looking for ways to reduce expenses, I was one of the first folks to be let go, because they can hire a new pharmacist right out of school and save anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 per year in salary, not counting the cost of the vacation and the other things that I'd accumulated. The biggest wake up for me is once they let me go, it took me 2 years to find another full-time job, because I only had a bachelor's degree in pharmacy. And at that time, all the new graduates were coming out with doctorates and residencies. There was no plan B, folks. I only had the plan A, pharmacy. All those hours I'd been putting in, working with no breaks, no lunch periods, it was putting a toll on my health. I was stressed out all the time. I was overweight, exhausted. I couldn't sleep, always away from the family. I just didn't feel the way that I wanted to. So 7 years ago, actually it's almost 8 years ago now, that led me to make a decision to partner with Dr. Wallach and Youngevity. Everything's changed since then. Let me tell you just a little bit about Youngevity, because we talk to Dr. Wallach every week. Youngevity is a solution-based company that focuses on energy performance, healthy aging, weight loss, even wealth creation. They call it betterment. I personally said yes for the health and wellness aspect, because I knew the importance of taking care of myself. I knew that taking care of me, what that would mean for my family. If my health was better, things would be better for my family. And I also knew that as a pharmacist, the drugs are not the answer, folks. They're not the answer to better health and longevity. I knew that prevention and providing proper support for the body could reduce or eliminate most health problems. Literally, within a few weeks of me starting my Healthy Bone and Joint program, and putting these products in my body and eating the right things and eliminating the bad things, I woke up with very little pain. My energy was way up. My sleep was better. And I'd actually lost weight. Just like a great book or a movie or a restaurant that you enjoy, you know, going to, naturally things started happening for me. I started talking about my experience. So literally within a very short time of doing just that, sharing with my family, my friends, my colleagues, my social media, sharing with them the experiences I was having, just like I would share with them about a good movie or a good restaurant. I started creating a residual income that has continued for me today every single month since that first month that I joined, all the way back in 2012. Now that's my story and that's my passion. Today I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Wallach and his story. As we already know, Dr. Wallach is a biomedical research pioneer. He's considered the founder of liquid vitamins and minerals. He earned that bachelor's degree in agriculture from University of Missouri, and a major in animal husbandry and a minor in field crops and soils. He earned his doctorate in veterinary medicine. He did 3 postdoctoral fellowships and eventually earned a degree of a naturopathic medicine so he can help humans just like he'd been helping the animals all those years. He's performed over 32,000 autopsies on various species of animals and humans. And that accumulation of work is in that book. It's in the Smithsonian Institute, The Disease of Exotic Animals. He's held all those different positions in the zoos and universities in the United States. He worked on the African continent on the Operation Rhino project, and also to track the traveling and mating habits, etc., of the elephants there. Yeah. He did a research project for the Centers of Disease Control, and he's done so many things. So today I want to kind of step back from all the science and nutrition for a moment and talk about Dr. Wallach's life. Now we know, I'll let you start, Dr. Wallach, about your childhood and how you even came into this.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing your story, Pharmacist Keith. It's a wonderful story and appreciate you sharing it with everybody. And basically, my story starts when I was 4 years old, and I had a disease that nobody even had a name for back then. I was getting violent. I was very, very literally crazy. And at 4 years old, and my mom and dad, we lived on a little Angus farm out in the middle of Missouri. And over a period of 5 years, it took me to 20 different doctors. They were a mix of pediatricians and psychiatrists and all that kind of stuff, and eye doctors and so on. And the last one was Mary Jane Skeffington, she had a little grandmotherly type lady. 5 years later, after 20 doctors, she was the 20th one. And she told my mom and dad, well, we really don't know what he's got, and he's going to hurt himself or somebody else. So we got institutionalized him. And so I asked my mother what that meant. She said, well, that means we're going to put you in a hospital. I said, okay, how long am I going to be in the hospital? And she says, well, maybe for the rest of your life. We don't know. Well, that didn't sound too good to a 9-year-old at that point after 5 years of dealing with this. And they tried different medications and talk therapy and all that stuff, none of which worked. And to make a long story short, that night, just, you know, they're packing up to put me in this institution. They're all in bed and I'm sitting on the end of my bed and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is not going to be good. And I can try to be good, but every time I try to be good, I just get badder, as they say, right? And so I'm thinking, well, let's see, we eat out of our garden and our animals eat out of the garden and they don't have the same problems I have. I said, but we're doing something different for them. We're giving them vitamins and minerals. So the next morning when everybody else was just sort of waking up, I went out to the barn and got all the vitamins and minerals we're giving the animals. And I threw my Cheerios out into the lawn for the chickens to eat. And I just ate my vitamins and minerals at that point with some water and some juice. And within 3 days, I was cured of something that's been going on for 5 years, getting worse and worse and worse. So today it'd be called autism, okay, with a violent form of autism. And again, to make a long story short, after weeks, going to church, people would point to me and whisper because I was a totally different person in weeks. And so they could actually see it. And finally, about a month later, a little old lady came up to me and she said, remember, I'm only 9. She said, I hear you can cure my diabetes. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I'm only 9 years old. I was very scared. I said, I don't even know what diabetes is. And so I went home that night. And I looked in the Merck manual, which is sort of our reference book for treating animals for different diseases and things. I looked up diabetes and it turned out it was a deficiency of a couple of minerals. So recommended the minerals and by golly, cured her. I'm only 9 years old, okay? So I knew what I was gonna do. Well, to make a long story short, as Pharmacist Keith said, in 1958, I graduated high school. I went to the University of Missouri, got my degree in agriculture.
Let's back up a little bit. So on the farm, you grew crops
Yes.
and you fertilized them, I'm assuming, with the traditional nitrogen, phosphorus, and
NPK, yep.
NPK. Now, how did you get the nutrition to the animals?
Okay, well, basically, we gave them vitamins and minerals in powder, okay, but also in pills and stuff. We'd give them injections, but also the thing that we did, and I have to remember, and until I was 10 years old, we didn't have electricity.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where you were going. We didn't even have electricity until we were 10, until I was 10. And we had a fireplace, we had a wood stove, we had a fire pit outside to burn the trash and all that kind of stuff. And all the ashes would go into the garden. The ashes were our source of minerals, okay? And so, of course, we were feeding the animals. They would come, and they would push us out of the way, and they'd go eat the stuff out of the garden because we're putting those ashes in there. Ashes aren't carbon. They're the minerals that the carrots and the beets and the peppers and the beans sucked up out of the ground. The wood ashes coming out of the stove, which Grandma used to eat every day, which was the minerals that the trees had sucked up out of the ground. And when you burned the wood, the minerals in the wood ashes would go into the garden. And Grandma used to save some off to the side. And every time she had cravings, called pica, P-I-C-A, you can look that up in any dictionary. It's a craving that's driven by mineral deficiencies. And if you don't have wood ashes, you're going to eat more food, you gain weight, you become obese. And obesity is due to a mineral deficiency causing pica, as opposed to you just can't control yourself and you're just eating too much. Okay.
So you're eating this food that's grown in the soil that's been amended with the ashes, but you're still having the problems. So
that's correct.
Obviously something's missing in that soil then.
Well, someone's missing in the soil, but I was eating pancakes and waffles for breakfast. I'm eating the breakfast of champions, Wheaties for breakfast. I'm eating Cheerios, and all of which is gluten. And
so you're
my
eating poorly, and then the soil's missing some of the nutrients to prevent those diseases. So that's why you had the problem you had.
That's correct. And of course, you have to appreciate, Pharmacist Keith, nutritional minerals, which make up 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients. Okay. 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients are minerals, 60. And plants don't make minerals. Plants can make vitamins. Plants can make amino acids. Plants can make fatty acids, but plants cannot make minerals. They make up 2/3 of the essential nutrients. And nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like gold and silver and coal and oil. Mm-hmm. And so there's places on earth where they don't have doctors, they don't have health insurance, yet it's not unusual for them to live to be 140, 160. The oldest one in those areas up in Pakistan, okay, and Iraq, the places where the Garden of Eden was. And of course, the Garden of Eden was the most fertile place on earth. So I'm assuming that's why the good Lord put Adam in there. Mm-hmm. And so, at any rate, the oldest one that's recorded is a Chinese doctor by the name of Li Qin-yung. And Li Qin-yung lived to be 256 years of age, and nobody could believe that. So the New York Times back in 1928 sent a reporter, James Hilton. He was a very vicious investigative reporter, and they said, boy, if anybody's going to find out if this is a fraud, it's this guy. So they sent him, New York Times sent him there. And he spent a whole year. I mean, he's following this Dr. Lee around, and Dr. Lee's giving lectures on how to live a long, healthful life and so forth. And he said, no, this guy's real. He did fingerprints of him and then went back to this guy where he'd been 50 years and 100 years earlier. There was his fingerprints, right? And so it was crazy. And so he wrote a book called Lost Horizon, which became a bestseller. And he took the name of a valley, Shangri-La, and said, this is where people live forever, Shangri-La. And he put it in that book as a mythical place where people live forever, Shangri-La. People have heard that term. And then they made a movie out of it in 1933, which became, an award-winning movie. And it's still today, it's actually a documentary. It was a true story, but everybody thought it was, a myth, okay? Well, again, to make a long story short, wood ashes, again, are not the same. You could eat the same recipe your grandmother ate, and she may have lived in Minnesota and lived to be 114, and you're in somewhere in Louisiana, you have her exact same recipe she saved and hand wrote for you. You're eating and cooking the same way, and you die at 40. Well, how come you died at 40 and she lived to be 114? Well, because the carrots in Louisiana don't have the same minerals in them that the carrots in Minnesota had. Okay, even though you're using the same recipe. And any doctor who would tell you, oh, just eat well, you get everything you need, don't waste your money on taking vitamins and minerals, should be put in jail for being a serial killer. Okay, because you cannot be the same as saying, I know you love your Jaguar, it's a very expensive car, but don't waste your money on that $3 quarter oil. Just put dirt from Texas in there. There's bound to be some oil in that dirt from Texas. Well, an idiot would know you couldn't do that. But yet when a doctor says, oh, just eat well and get everything you need. Well, my doctor says I can get everything I need just by eating well. Well, you're a dead man walking. And two very famous people just died here recently. It's sort of the average ages in the industrialized world. We're talking about Sean Connery, 007. Okay, he died at 90. He had Alzheimer's disease. Then Alex Trebek, okay, from the, he had that TV program. Jeopardy, yep. And he just died at 80, okay. And then Jean Calment from France, she died a couple of years ago at 122. And of course, Dr. Lee Chen-Yung, he died at 256. So what's the difference? It's what they were eating, okay? It's not genetic. Now, you have to appreciate that in the Garden of Eden, okay, the Garden of Eden, and
I was going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, well, it says in the Garden of Eden that, let's see here, a guy by the name of Adam, I know I can find his name here. Oh, yeah, here he is, and Adam, he lived to be 930, okay? First man to be created, you know, during the creation. And why did the good Lord pick the Garden of Eden in Iraq to put the first guy, first human being on earth? Well, there's 4 rivers that dump into it yet today, okay? The Tigris, Euphrates, the Pishon and Dishon rivers are, if you look at them, they're not clear, crystal clear water like you get out of your faucet. They are mud and brown with mud and minerals and dirt. And it was the most fertile place on earth, most fertile place on earth. And so when you look at the people who live there, okay, recorded by history, to make a long story short, the top 10 long of people, and these are all descendants of Adam and Eve. Enoch lived to be 365. Lamech lived to be 777. Mahalalel lived to be 895. Enos lived to be 905. Kenan lived to be 910. Seth lived to be 912. Adam lived to be 930. Noah lived to be 950. And Jared lived to be 962. And lastly, Methuselah lived to be 969. Okay, now the people who live there today are still living to be 140, 168. It's not unusual for them to live to those ages. Now, they don't record them because they don't jive with what everything else is happening in Europe and the United States. So, you know, every once in a while you'll see a news release on somebody's, this guy's celebrating his 168th birthday, and here's a picture of him out in the garden digging weeds. You see that like once or twice a year, and it's always from the same place. It's always from where the Garden of Eden was, because that's where those 4 rivers dump all their minerals. Now, when you look at the same story on the whole earth, why is it the oceans are dying? Not because of carbon fuels, not because of combustion engine, not because of fossil fuels. So why is the carbon dioxide going up? Because we have 1 million hydroelectric dams damming up the rivers. That's why I was one of the 5 featured speakers at the Tesla annual event last year in August 7th through the 11th. I have pictures of all these maps of all these countries and the dams, where the dams are on the maps, and they shut off the food supply to the reefs in the ocean. And the algae, which is what breaks down the carbon dioxide in the air, because 3/5 of the Earth's plant materials are in the ocean, not on the dry land. We're talking about algae and that sort of stuff.
And you said something the other day that I didn't realize. You know, humans, we take 90 essential nutrients, and plants, they only need 3. But you said algae can need how many?
They need 17. There's like 8 different PhD projects that show that algae requires 17 nutrients to break down carbon dioxide into oxygen and carbon chains, so you can make carbohydrates and sugar and amino acids and fiber and that kind of stuff. And so if any one of those is missing or 2 or 3 of them are low, they can't do their job. Now, they're not going to die, just like when you have nutritional deficiencies and you get diabetes. You don't die, you just get diabetes. You might be low in certain things, okay,
Right.
and get arthritis. You don't die, you're just miserable and restricted and so forth, the same way with those
Right.
algae. And so that's why I was picked as one of the top 5 speakers at the Tesla event last year. And it's one of those things where, and we do have those DVDs available, by the way, of my speech.
Yeah.
We can save the earth, we can save the reefs, and I'm working on getting grants to do that. We don't have to tear down the dams. We don't want anybody to go without electricity, but we're making augers that'll go through the dams or around the dams or over the dams. They'll be powered by solar panels on top of the dam, so nobody will have to pay for extra electricity. And these minerals will get down into the ocean again, and we will be able to save the Great Barrier Reef. And so I've been doing a lot of stuff with Australia and Queensland and so forth to prepare for my arrival, so that when we can just jump right in there and go right to work.
Right.
And so, at any rate, quickly, I did get my degree in agriculture, and halfway through that, my roommate, I was wrestling for the University of Missouri also. And so
I wanted to talk about that. You started wrestling in high school.
Yes, sir.
And this is after you started getting all the nutrients. And you're not a big guy.
No.
You're a small guy, so you're smaller than average, and you just don't. People don't think of you as a wrestler, but you kind of have a little bit of background there because your dad trained boxers, right?
Well, no, he was a boxer. He was a Golden Glove champion for 2 years in a row at the lightweight, and so he did train boxers and professional boxers and stuff. And so when I was a kid, when I was 18 years old, I was working with people who would later on become champions, okay, professional champions in boxing and so forth. But in high school, I only weighed 90 pounds,
Right.
but I was wrestling 120 because I had a lot of upper body strength because I'm throwing bales of hay around, all that kind of stuff. Okay.
And you couldn't have done that without your discovery when you were 9 years old.
That's correct. Okay. And so I transferred that to my dad's boxers that he was working with. Virgil Akins was a big one. He was just a kid, from Chicago, and he knew technique, but he wasn't very strong. And so I started giving him, I'm only a kid and I'm giving him vitamins and minerals. And he won the welterweight championship. And he was only a lightweight, but he won the welterweight championship because I was giving him all those vitamins and minerals. Virgil Akins, you can look him up.
All right. So now you're in college, and we know you're studying
agriculture.
Right. And to me, it's amazing how fast you got through your college studies.
Okay. So anyway, I'm in agriculture, and I'm wrestling for the University of Missouri, and I'm also working part-time in the pathology department. Mm-hmm. And my roommate, who's also, because they put all the athletes rooming together, and he said, I'm going to go, take the test to see if I can't get into veterinary school. You want to go? I said, no, I'm just here for agriculture. He said, come on. So I went and I passed the test. I aced the test. So they put me in veterinary school at the same time that I was in agricultural school. So I was doing both agriculture and veterinary medicine, but I didn't have any money. And so I was working also part-time for the pathology department and to make some money. And so I said, well, heck, I might as well get credit for this. So I started registering in classes and started getting credit towards my degree in pathology.
Somewhere in all this, you became an Eagle Scout too.
Oh yeah. I became an Eagle Scout in high school. And so I became an Eagle Scout in high school. But then back to when I'm working part-time as a pathologist, it was Christmas in 1961. I graduated veterinary school in 64, but in 1961, I'm still a beginning veterinary student, but I'm working part-time in pathology and getting classes there. Everybody's off on Christmas. I'm the new guy on the block, so I stayed. And in 1961, December 1961, there was a mass die-off in Missouri. 500 6-month-old sheep died. In 2 weeks, they were going to market. They were perfect. Beautiful 2 inches of wool. They were going to shear them and then send them to market. Well, one night, they all died. 500 died in one night. In the state of Missouri, in central Missouri, where Columbia is, where I was going to school, University of Missouri, the wintertime temperatures can be 50, 60, 70 because of the heat coming up from the Mississippi River, which goes down into the Gulf of Mexico. But when the breeze blows up the river, you can have 60, 70 degrees in the middle of winter up there. And so it's been running 50, 60 degrees, 50, 60 degrees. Well, the night all those sheep died, it dropped down to 19 because the wind came from Minnesota down the river, okay, pushed all the warm air out. It dropped the temperature, ambient temperature dropped to 19, and they all died from hypothermia. Well, nobody knew that. So they brought me 50 and I opened them up. The first thing I found was the blood coming down over the wool looked like chocolate milk instead of blood, which is methemoglobin caused by nitrate poisoning. So I knew right away and took blood samples to have it confirmed that they were getting nitrate somewhere in their drinking water, which is a fertilizer. And then I got up into their necks and they all had goiter. Instead of their thyroid lobes being the size of a shelled almond, size of a shelled almond, maybe a centimeter long, a couple of millimeters thick, and half a centimeter wide. These are as big as plums. So they had goiter. And so they all died of hypothermia in one night. And so they're still edible, but they couldn't sell them because they died, right? So I filled my freezer with them, right? Because they're okay.
You just said something that I've heard this story a million times. You said they all died of nitrate poisoning. Isn't nitrates what we put in food as a preservative?
Like bacon? Yes.
Yeah. So it's the same thing.
That's correct. Okay. And it's also uses it for, the same thing. And yeah, nitrate poisoning them set them up. But when the weather dropped, they died of hypothermia because their thyroids couldn't maintain their body temperature, right? So they died of hypothyroidism, AKA hypothermia right there. Right. And so anyway, got it written up. And when all the professors came back, I gave it to them and I asked them, could I at least be a co-author on this? And I'm only a student. He said, I said, I don't even have a degree yet. He said, no, it doesn't matter. This is your baby. You publish it and just say that you're a pathology student, right? I got it published in 3 scientific journals, international scientific. I was 21 years old. I was so excited. I'm sending copies of this paper out when it was published to senators, to governors. I sent them to the president. I sent them to judges. I sent them to mayors. And of course, I gave it to Marlon Perkins, who had worked for the St. Louis Zoo in the summer times in the petting zoos and so forth. And Perkins, later on when I was in Africa, after I graduated University of Missouri, I had 2 years left to finish my pathology degree. I already had my degree in agriculture. I had my degree in veterinary medicine. My pathology degree, I had 2 years left, so I went to Iowa State to finish it. And a year into it, halfway through it, I didn't get to finish my pathology degree yet. Perkins sends me a letter, said, you know that paper you wrote on the goiter in the lambs? He says, I used that. I got a $25 million grant using that. I applied to the National Institutes of Health. You're going to be the pathologist on the project.
Okay. So this was after you went to Africa or before?
Oh, no, before.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now I have to say that when I came back from Africa, I actually did the project, but he had sent this article in 1961. I came back from Africa in 1967. Okay. So there's that time lapse in there. Okay. And, worked on the White Rhino Conservation Project and the elephant migration and breeding projects. And so Perkins, I'm prepared to stay in Africa forever. I didn't speak English for 2 years. It was all Afrikaans, Matabele, Zulu.
You had 2 kids while you were over there.
I delivered my second baby out in the bush because we were 800 miles from the nearest European community. So I was kind of an honorary Zulu Matabele guy kind of thing. And, I was doing, doing clinical work in the villages there because I knew medicine by that time because of my veterinary degree, right? So I'm taking care of not only their cows and their horses and their pigs and their sheep and their chickens and turkeys, but I'm also taking care of them and their kids, get a lot of clinical experience. I did a few autopsies on the side because I'd already done a bunch of human autopsies. And again, to make a long story short, Perkins, sends me this letter and says, okay, we got this thing here. This was in April of 1967. Came back and I worked for 10 years at Washington University with Barry Cometer and Marlon Perkins, the Center for the Biology of Natural Systems. Did 20,000 autopsies. And to make a long story short, the gist of it was these autopsies were 17,000 some change of over 454 species of zoo animals from all the big zoos in the United States and Mexico and Canada. They'd send me frozen bodies and 3,000 humans. What I learned was there were no genetically transmitted diseases. I'll repeat that. There are no genetically transmitted diseases. There are no genetically transmitted birth defects. I got it published in my thesis, which was 5,000 pages. 5,000 pages. And they, W.B. Saunders, you may remember W.B. Saunders, which is the biggest medical publishing house at that time for medical textbooks. They had their editors edit it down. It didn't lose one bit of information, but they took 5 of my sentences and made it 1 sentence, okay, with bigger words. And
to
so,
make a long story short.
Yeah, to make a long story short, they published it as 1,200 pages instead of 5,000 pages. And it was put into the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. I was so proud of that. And at the time they published 30,000 of them, their initial publishing, they sold for $25,000 each. 6 months later, they published another 30,000. They sold within 6 months for $25,000 each. Now, if you go to Siri or Amazon now and say, are there any of these copies of the book, Diseases of Exotic Animals for sale? And it'll take you there, and you'll see a bunch of them that are beat up pretty bad. You might be able to get them for $4,500 or $6,000 each. If they're in acceptable condition, they'll be $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000. If they're in excellent condition, they'll be $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, $20,000. If they're new, still in the box, never been opened, they will sell for $25,000 to $35,000 still today. Okay. Now, the reason why it has the unimpeachable science that there are no genetically transmitted diseases. For instance, there was one study I did with foxes where a pair of wild-caught Arctic foxes were born. This pair was caught in the wild. They had 10 babies, all of which had cleft palate, and all the keepers brought them to me up at the Brookfield Zoo and said, hey, can you destroy these for us? You know, give them the injection because, you know, we don't want to just wring their neck or anything like that. It's too cruel, so just give them the injection. And I said, no, I've been waiting for something like this. Perfect. The mother and father are perfect, right? Yeah, no problem. I said, what did you feed the mother and father? That's not a genetic thing. It's a nutritional deficiency. And they looked at me kind of funny. I said, what'd you feed them? Well, they're meat eaters, so we just gave them horse meat. Well, that's fine. Did you give them any vitamins and minerals? No, we just gave them horse meat. They're meat eaters. I said, well, that's why the babies were all born with cleft palate. So I said, they'd already killed 3 of the babies to examine them to see if they had other defects, okay? So I had 7 left. So I said, okay, what you want to do is get some puppy formula that you feed orphan baby puppies and get a couple of keepers to feed these 7 babies, immediately get the mother and father on dog food. And then when these babies, when they're 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks old and they're starting to eat solid food, put them on dog food. And when these babies get to be 6 months old, they'll go through puberty, okay, and call me. And we'll put one baby boy with the mother and one baby girl with the dad, and the other, so we'll have a brother and sister. We'll have 3 or 4 sets of brothers and sisters here, okay? And so we're going to inbreed them to prove to you that this is not genetic. They said, you're on. And so to make a long story short, we had almost 100 babies born, and they're all inbred, of course, and all the babies were born perfectly normal because they're getting all the vitamins and minerals through the dog food. And so that was written up in scientific journals, and that just kind of proved, okay, as some of the stuff that went into this book, The Disease of Exotic Animals. And I have to tell you 3 other issues. Number one, I was getting, of course, to work with Amish people, and they have a huge number of things going on. And I already discovered the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis, because after my 10 years with the NIH in this big project.
Let's step back a second. I do want to get into that. So it took, what, 13 years for this project?
Well, actually, it was 10 officially, but, you know, it has never stopped.
Right. Okay. So for 10 years. Now, people, when they think of this, they're thinking that you're doing this project for the 10 years, but you actually held several jobs at key zoos during that time. Is that correct?
For the first, of the 10 years, for the first 6 years, it was right there at Washington University. The other 4 was 2 years at the Brookfield Zoo and 2 years at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. Mm-hmm.
And in 2 years?
I was working at the Yerkes Primate Center. I worked at the Yerkes Primate Center for NASA for 2 years. Okay, that was in Atlanta, Georgia.
And I know you worked for the zoo in Jacksonville as well.
Well, yeah, I worked for the zoo in Jacksonville. I worked in Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. I worked for all these different zoos, for 6 months here, 2 years there.
Yeah.
But
I don't think people realize how much, I mean, we know how much of a workaholic you are today, but I don't think people realize, how much you did back then. Okay, so now the Amish people, you've had your
let's back up.
Yerkes, so go ahead.
Okay, so I worked at Yerkes and I found the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis, and I got permission to do biopsies in the other 24 baby monkeys in the same colony, and they all had different mothers and fathers, so they weren't related in any way other than they were monkeys, just like you and I are related as humans, but we're not cousins or brothers or anything like that. And so they all had cystic fibrosis. So I wrote it up and got it written up, and they fired me because they said it wasn't a genetic disease as was thought. It was a simple nutritional deficiency disease, could be reversed and cured and all, prevented and all kinds of stuff. And they fired me. I said, well, no, I saved tissue and I saved blood and everything. So you guys can test and see, you can see what no, you're too out of your mind. And so they fired me.
Okay.
So that's when I went back to school and became a naturopathic physician.
All right, so let's stop right there. Another thing that people don't know that you were going through at the time is your wife at the time had cancer.
Yes, she had Hodgkin's disease, and of course they were treating her with the classic chemotherapy. I didn't know any better at the time. Okay, and so we agreed that she should get chemotherapy as they dictated, and they killed her in 6 months. Mm-hmm. Okay, and of course she was the mother of my fourth child, son. Okay. But at any rate, it was a terrible thing.
Yeah, and see, I just want to stop right there because this is, folks, we're all going through different things. There's always things in our life that really put us back, knock us down, knock us out. And I just want Dr. Wallach to be an inspiration that you've got to keep going. You can't let these things stop you. And that's not what Dr. Wallach did. He kept going. He had 4 kids to take care of, and he had to keep going. And let's go on to the next part of your story now.
Okay. I went back to Portland, Oregon, okay, because they allowed me to teach because of all my papers I'd written, my scientific papers and everything. And, of course, the book, The Disease of Exotic Animals. So they allowed me to teach there. I said, well, if I'm teaching here, just like when I got my pathology degree, I said, if I'm going to be here teaching, why don't I just, get credit for this? And so to make a long story short, by 1982, I had graduated naturopathic school and got my degree. Not only my degree, but I got licensed and I started my practice. I'm working on the weekends in Cannon Beach, Oregon, and Portland, Oregon, in my practice, and teaching during the week at the school. And I'm traveling around and I'm realizing that, I'm seeing 15 to 20 patients a week. And after maybe 6 months or a year, I was up to maybe 8 or 10 or 12 a day kind of thing. I said, this is not going to go very far here. I've got 4 kids to feed. And without this teaching job, I'm not making enough money in my practice to really take care of my kids. So what I did was I started putting ads in the newspaper and giving lectures at night. So I got to somehow get more people coming. So I'd get 300 people come to my lectures at night, 2 nights a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so now I'm seeing 25 patients a day, okay? And on the weekends, I'm seeing maybe 30, 40 a day on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm starting to get really busy here. And that's when I realized that I had to somehow get more information out there. And that's when I started, I got sponsored into a big network marketing company, which I don't want to name, but I got up to, after 2 years, I was making $300,000 a month. I'll repeat that. I was making $300,000 a month in that big company. And I said, okay, this is what I've got to do. I've got to start my own company here. And I was very ethical. I didn't steal all the people that I had sponsored underneath them. I left them there with another person, and I continued to consult with them, and they gave me a percentage of the stuff they were making. And it got me started in my own company. And again, to make a long story short, now we're in 50 countries. We see about 2 million people a month. That beats 15, 20 a day, okay? And so now we're getting the message out there because of just exposure, numbers of people. Mm-hmm. And of course, in the beginning, when I was still a veterinarian, before I became a naturopathic physician, when I was treating people, I couldn't say, well, I'm treating this person, but you're only a veterinarian. How can you do that? And so I came up with what we called the pig pack, which is what we call our healthy start pack now. It was originally the pig pack. Nobody could say, well, there's a veterinarian at pig pack. Okay. And then when somebody had arthritis, we put the glucogel with it and turned it into the pig arthritis formula. And people were taking this and sharing this all over the world. It's like crazy. And they're reversing their arthritis with my pig arthritis formula. And so that's when I realized I had to start really, really working for people.
See, I was a pharmacist, and one Saturday, they didn't play your show here live. One Saturday, a customer came in and says, "You got to listen to this guy." And I'm listening to you, and you're talking about the duck pack, the pig pack,
well, it was a duck diabetes pack.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, this guy's message is so spot on, and that's when I started following your protocols and started using your protocols on my patients in my pharmacy practice. Of course, I didn't sell your products back then because the pharmacy I worked for had a GNC store in it. So the sales of the GNC products were skyrocketing, and people were starting to get results. Nowhere near the results I've seen people get now that have all 90 essential nutrients. But it's this crazy doctor on the radio has this crazy show talking about pig pack and duck pack and all that. And I told people, go listen to that show and then let me show you what you need to do. And that's how I started on this whole path of nutrition.
So at any rate, thank you for filling in the gaps there. And again, to make a long story short, I used that money that I was making from that other company because I'd saved a lot of it. And we built a 65,000 square foot home office here in San Diego where I was practicing because they did have licensed naturopathic medicine back then. And, and so I think there's like 8 or 10 schools right now teaching legitimate naturopathic medicine. And I still would give lectures at all these trade shows, maybe 2 or 3 a month, all over the world. And many of them, because of the COVID thing, have kind of gone underground, and I do Zooms for them now. I did one on Saturday for a big trade show that I'd been working. You know, we'd have booths for 25 years, and I'd lecture there and so forth. Well, now we're doing Zooms for them and so on. But we deal with over 600 different diseases. We have programs for over 600 different human diseases. We have a pet division, you know, in case you have dogs and cats and birds and fish and all that kind of stuff. Being a veterinarian, we do have a pet division. And the thing you have to appreciate is that we're the same as we were thousands of years ago. Human beings are the same physiologically. And if you want to maximize your lifespan, if you want to add 25 to 50 healthful years to your life, as Pharmacist Keith said, you got to get rid of all the bad stuff, the fried foods, the processed meats, the oils, the gluten, wheat, brown, and rye oats. It's a very easy message. And then you have to take the 90 essential nutrients. You cannot depend. Any doctor who would tell you can just eat well and get everything you need should be put in jail, again, for being a serial killer. And I'll give you a quick example, because I was on a panel here this Saturday, a nutrition panel. And one of the things we were talking about, you can't not talk about COVID when you get 2 people together. Let's compare Mexico, the country of Mexico, with 128 million people, with the country of Japan with 125 million people. Mexico has 961,938 cases of COVID. Japan has 107,000. In Mexico, 94,000 people have died, and in Japan, 1,800 have died. So what's the difference? You got exactly the same populations. What's the difference in them? The difference is the Japanese are Asian, and they live on rice and sweet potatoes, and the Mexicans live on wheat. They drink wheat, they eat wheat, and so everything they do is wheat, which is gluten. Their villi are going in their intestines, so they can't even absorb, even if they're supplementing, they cannot absorb nutrients to make their bone marrow happy, and their bone marrow is their immune system. Your bone marrow makes white blood cells to go through your bloodstream to go kill and eat the viruses. Your bone marrow makes stem cells to make antibodies, which go through your bloodstream to kill the viruses. your bone marrow makes platelets and red blood cells, and you know people. And Pharmacist Keith, I guarantee you, you even today see people that are still going to a doctor once a month or once every 2 months for an iron shot and a B12 shot because they're anemic and they have hemorrhages under their skin and all that kind of stuff. And then also, when you look at professional athletes, the average lifespan of professional athletes, when you take all sports combined, is 62. The average lifespan of basketball players, when you just isolate them, is 51. Now they're making sometimes millions of dollars a game. Why is it that they're dying so young? I mean, exercise is supposed to be good for you. Well, they're drinking Red Bull with 2 nutrients in it and sugar and caffeine. Our sports drink Rebound has 100 nutrients in it, including the nutrients in it that will prevent the sudden heart death of athletes. Now, I need to go back to the Amish kids, if I may, for 2 minutes.
Please.
Okay. So after I got my degree and started working in California and out in the West, and I'm working in Utah and Idaho and Wyoming and Montana and South and North Dakota and Washington State and so forth, I got a call from a guy who's a Navy SEAL. There's a long story for that, but the short version is this Navy SEAL by the name of Marvin. He contacts me and says, look, I'm Amish, and all these Amish kids are dying of muscular dystrophy. And I hear, you know how to help kids. So I went up there with him. And muscular dystrophy in calves and little baby cows is called white muscle disease. And a farmer can go into any feed store and for $10 buy a bottle of this injectable mineral that when the baby's born with white muscle disease, AKA muscular dystrophy in humans, you inject them with this mineral, and in 2 hours' time, they're up running around perfectly normal. So I said, well, let's try it in people. And we were getting rid of the muscular dystrophy, these Amish kids right, left, and center. So we got a hold of Jerry Lewis. This is 2011 at this point. We got a hold of Jerry Lewis and from the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And, he's very skeptical, of course. He said, we'll come see you. So Marvin and I went to see Jerry Lewis. We gave him 20 charts of kids that we had eliminated muscular dystrophy from. They had had it from the time they were born. The oldest one was 31. The youngest one was like 2 or 3 months old. And their doctor said, we don't know why, but they don't have muscular dystrophy anymore. Well, we've been giving them at that time. We only had what was called Kids Toddy, like a hot toddy. And this Kids Toddy was a liquid supplement that had all these nutrients in it, especially that nutrient, okay? And the mothers would put it in their baby formulas, and we were slowly getting rid of muscular dystrophy. The percentages were down slowly. Well, at any rate, to make a long story short, we eliminated muscular dystrophy. We gave about 30 charts to Jerry Lewis. He got excited. He took it to the Muscular Dystrophy Association in 2011, and they looked at it, and he called us. He stood up to leave, and he says, after you read through all this, call me, we'll come back again. And before he even got out the door, they fired Jerry Lewis in 2011. They fired him because he brought them the cure. Well, in 2015, they had to stop the telethon because they were spending all the money, but they couldn't raise 10 cents without Jerry Lewis, okay? Now, if you call the Muscular Dystrophy Association today and say, whatever happened to Jerry Lewis? Why did he disappear so fast? They'll say, well, we are obligated not to tell that story. There's legal things about. Well, that's because they fired him for finding the cures, why they won't tell the story. Okay, now, here comes the bigger part of the story. There's even a bigger part of that story. Dr. Milan and I went to Qishan, China in 1988. We did 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 in Qishan province, China. Okay, as I say, Qishan city is Heilongjiang province. Because this Qishan disease is a sudden heart attack that young athletes die from. It's a deficiency of a single mineral, which is not found in that soil in that province, Heilongjiang province. So we got permission to do 2,000 autopsies. Okay, we got 1,700 done before our time was up, and we paid for it ourselves. We couldn't get a grant that fast, so we just went there on our own dime. And we got it published in 1990. It was in 3 languages. The English version is The Biology of Trace Element Research, okay? And basically, we were very excited about that. We began to see muscular dystrophy just tanking. It was going away. We've already gotten rid of cystic fibrosis at that time. Okay, so no more cystic fibrosis, no more muscular dystrophy. And then 200 of those 1,700 autopsies were in kids that died under the age of 1 year, and they would be diagnosed with sudden death syndrome here. So April 16, 2013, in a federal court, all these federal agencies, are like 6 of them, NIH, CDC, all these federal agencies they're there to defend not putting this nutrient into baby formulas because medical doctors are saying it's poisonous. I'm saying you better put it in there. And so the ruling went in my favor to put that nutrient into baby formulas, Similac, Enfamil, all the other baby formulas. A year and a half later, after it was required to be put in all baby formulas, there was a big headline in the Charlotte Observer, front page, like Third World War. That's all it was on the front page. I mean, big bold letters, big, huge thing. We don't know why, but sudden death syndrome has vanished from the state of North Carolina. 3 months later, the newspapers in Missouri, we don't know why, but sudden death syndrome has vanished in the state of Missouri. 3 months later, every newspaper came out in the world and said, we don't know why, but the diagnosis of sudden death syndrome has dropped dramatically by 85 to 95% because I put the nutrient in there. So I'm taking credit for getting rid of cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, sudden death syndrome, okay, because only 2% of the babies that were diagnosed with sudden death syndrome at autopsy were in bed with their mother when they died. 98% were not. It was a big lie. They all died of heart attacks under the age of 2-3 months of age. And of course, a pathologist, he's looking for heart attacks in 70-year-olds, not 7-week-olds. So they didn't even pay attention to it. They didn't do hair analysis. They didn't do blood tests. They just opened them up and said, no, we can't find anything. The mother must have laid on them. Well, the baby was in the crib by himself. Mother wasn't in the crib with that baby, okay? So I'm taking credit for getting, and challenge me. I hope somebody, some medical school, please challenge me. Let's go to court, okay? And let's have a wager. What are you gonna do if I win, okay? What do you want me to do if you win? Let's do this, okay? But I'm taking credit for getting rid of cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, and sudden death syndrome by putting that one nutrient in the baby formula. Very, very proud of that. And we can get rid of 600 different diseases. We can add 25 to 50 healthy years to people's lives by following this book, which came out in 2005. It's called Hell's Kitchen, The Cause, Prevention, and Cure of the Metabolic Syndrome, which are the pre-existing conditions, okay, that people have as they get older. And people say, well, you know, you're bound to have all these things because I'm 75 years old. No, I'm 82 years old and I don't have any of them because I've been taking these nutrients for 72 years. I've been gluten-free for 72 years. You don't have to get these diseases. It's not an aging thing. They're nutritional deficiencies. Back to you.
So you are traveling all over the place back then. You can't be everywhere at once. So somewhere along the line, somebody recorded one of your lectures. And this became a tool that has launched so many people's career. I want to talk about one person that early on that you came across.
Okay.
A lady that worked at Taco Bell. Can you tell me the story there? She was a teenager, right? Cheryl
Morley. Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I met her, she was 23 years old. She started working at Taco Bell when she was 13. And she had sort of what I had when I was a kid. She had all these emotional things, and she was really in bad shape from that standpoint. And she would, again, have what we would call today autism and that kind of stuff. And her mother brought her to me and says, is there anything you can do for her? And so, you know, actually very quickly, within weeks, she was totally a perfect 23-year-old kid. And she became one of our very invested, not money-wise, but time-wise and energy-wise and belief-wise. She just really understood how much this had done for her. And she's probably one of our top distributors today. And she has an army of people. She has literally probably 1 million people in her organization that she works with as customers and as leaders and so forth. Because we have several million people. I think she probably has a third of them, so she probably has over 1 million. And she started with us when she was 23 years old, and she was a high school dropout. Okay, she didn't have any college education. This is not somebody that has, you know, 3 degrees and all that kind of stuff. But she understood, and because she got the nutrition, her brain and her mind worked perfectly, okay? And so she just read all my stuff and listened to all my stuff and went to all my lectures and this, that, and the other. And she, you know, she was sort of an adopted daughter at that time. And I introduced her to, of course, all of our staff members and everything. And her husband, Jonathan Emord, is our chief attorney. And so I got her married to our chief attorney, so that was good. And of course, I don't know how many millions of the audio cassette tapes and CDs and books she handed out. Dead
I was
Doctors
going to
Don't
say,
Lie.
she probably handed out
Millions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've sold. Now we've sold. I don't know how many have been copied illegally because they're copywritten. I don't. But we've sold over 600 million copies in 9 languages. 9 languages. Okay, and the book, of course, is in multiples of languages. I don't even know how many languages it is now. The book all over the world. Okay, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. The CDs and DVDs, and then pretty quickly after that, this one came out. Black Gene Lies. There are no genetic diseases in black folks. And wait a minute, they have high blood pressure and diabetes and obesity and sickle cell anemia? No, none of those are genetic. They're all nutritional deficiency diseases. I mean, we even have every species of deer in America has sickle cell anemia. I don't know how the black population and the deer population got together. Okay, it's not a genetic disease. It's a simple nutritional deficiency disease, totally 100% preventable. I can take a human being or an animal with sickle cell anemia, male and female, and they can have 25 babies. It'll be normal as long as they stay away from gluten and take my 90 essential nutrients. It is not a genetic disease. It's not genetically transmitted. And so, again, all of that is in this book, Epigenetics. We have a 2 CD set called Epigenetics also, where Bruce Lipton, he and I are the 2 guys that are thought to be the fathers of the science of epigenetics. And that one's available right now as we speak, and it's going out the door like crazy. It's being translated into several languages as we speak. The first one out will be Spanish, because we're here in California, and we have such a big, big army of Spanish folks here in California who go into Mexico, and they love our Spanish translations and our CDs and DVDs and our books and things. So that's kind of the direction we're going here. But also they're in Mandarin and Cantonese because, of course, 1.4 billion Chinese.
Right. I also highly recommend this. This is one of your first books as well. And I like it because all these stories you hear Dr. Wallach talk about, you can find copies of the articles inside the book. So I like this book for that reason.
Yeah, so Let's Play Doctor.
And Let's Play Doctor, Passport to Aromatherapy. Absolutely.
And the fourth one in the set is, it's all in your head. There's 25 different diseases you can get from having osteoporosis of the skull. You're going to go to 25 different specialties for peripheral neuropathies and dental problems and hearing problems and balance problems and carpal tunnel syndrome and Erb's palsy, which has now been renamed Wallach's palsy. Okay, and Wallach's vertigo instead of vertigo. Okay, and so all of these things are caused by nutritional deficiency. There's 100 different diseases, Pharmacist Keith. There's 100 different diseases that are caused by osteoporosis.
All right, so we've got a CD and DVD that's out. If you go to drjwallach.com, right there on the page under What's New is Your Doctor Killing You. It's right there. That's recorded from some of our earlier lectures here. We've got a new one that's going to press today or tomorrow called Red Warning Lights. And this is going to be a CD format where we go through different warning that your body shows you and what nutrition that you need to use to help.
And it goes along with this book here, Hell's Kitchen, The Red Warning Lights. It's a beautiful, beautiful collection of information. So I can't thank you enough, Pharmacist Keith. I know you spent a lot of time going back to all of our Zooms and shows and things and pulling the appropriate pieces of information. So thank you so much for that.
And then I'm going to be putting up on YouTube probably tonight as well the lecture that we've done on pregnancy. I put all that together, so I'm going to post that up on YouTube. It'll be on the YouTube channel called Prosperity RX. So while you're there, be sure you like and hit the little bell so you get notified anytime I send out new shows on there, which I do put out quite often. The channel's not just about prosperity, but it's also about health. My belief is that prosperity encompasses your health, your emotional well-being, and money. And that's what that channel's all about. And then once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I've got several free gifts I'm going to give out. So be sure you subscribe there. Dr. Wallach, your radio show can be found where?
Okay, it's Monday through Friday, Pacific time, noon to 1 is Dead Doctors Don't Lie. It's 888-379-2552, 888-379-2552, again from noon to 1 Pacific time. And then 1 to 2 Pacific time, Let's Play Doctor, also Monday through Friday, is 1-877-912-7529. That's 877-912-7529. That's 1 to 2 Pacific time. And then I am doing so many Zooms now, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'm in 12 countries on these Zooms, and it's growing very rapidly now because I can get 1,000 people in Taiwan, and I don't have to fly over there and spend money on a hotel and an airplane and risk getting COVID and all that kind of stuff. And so it's one of those things where we're looking for help. We're growing like crazy, and I can't thank you enough for pointing that out, Pharmacist Keith. And if you want to work with somebody good who knows what he's doing and will give you, he'll love you like a father, okay, is Pharmacist Keith. So get with him also and become one of our associates. You pay wholesale prices for the products. If you get on auto ship, I will pay the shipping. It costs you only $50 a year. That's $4 and less than 20 cents a month to maintain your franchise. Okay, it's $50 a year, which is tax deductible. If you've been kicked out of your apartment, you're living in your car, you're a perfect person to run a Youngevity business. You don't need a warehouse, you don't need employees, you don't need a big inventory. You take your orders on your cell phone or your computer, you forward them to Youngevity. They will do the shipping and send you a check every month based on the volume you create. And again, I will pay the shipping if you get on auto ship. I don't know how to make it any better than that.
And then you want to catch Dr. Wallach's radio archives, you can go to radio.givedoc90days. That's 90. Radio.givedoc90days.com. All of his books, CDs, DVDs are available at drjwallach.com. That's D as in David, R as in Roger, J as in Joel, Wallach, WALLACH.com. And you can catch those things there. Do you got just a couple minutes, Doc, or you got to run?
No, I'm fine. What do you need?
Right now, I just see one question, and I wanted to get this on there because we talk about nitrates as a preservative and how dangerous they are. This person said they bought a product that has potassium sorbate in it, wanted to know what it's for. It's a preservative, and want to know if that's bad like the nitrates are.
Well, potassium is an essential nutrient, okay? Mm-hmm. And so it's, it depends on what you're taking with. If potassium sorbate in bacon, I wouldn't use it, okay? We have potassium in our products because it's an essential nutrient. And so sorbitol is a sugar, essentially what it is. And it's one of those things where don't look at that little piece. That little piece is, if you're taking the 90 essential nutrients, stay away from fried foods, processed meats, oils, and glutens. Right. I get people, they say, in fact, I was on the Zoom Saturday and we had one of these people on the panel. They were saying, don't use salt, use sodium chloride. I said, this guy must be stupid because sodium chloride is salt. Of course, we have a whole savor division. We call it savor, okay, which is our spice division. And we have a pink Himalayan salt with 84 minerals in it, including sodium chloride. It's an essential nutrient. If anybody tells you to restrict salt, they should be put in jail for being a serial killer. You have to salt your food to taste. And back in the days of, our religious founders and fathers, Moses and Jesus and so forth, these people were all telling people, rightfully so, you want to be a good person, be as the salt of the earth. Everybody needs salt. It was the first big internationally exported, transported product in the world was salt, okay? And it's still today an essential nutrient. You must have it. One of the
very first known preservatives.
That's correct. And so you have to use salt. Of course, we have a pink Himalayan salt. We have a pink Himalayan salt with ground black pepper in it, which I have every morning on my baked sweet potatoes with butter as well as with my rice. And so I have rice and baked sweet potatoes for breakfast with my pink Himalayan salt. I have salmon, smoked salmon from Alaska. And I had 3 soft boiled eggs with soft yolks. I had a couple of yogurts with no sugar in them. And I had all of my supplements, my 90 for life, as I do twice a day. And for lunch, I'm going to have a Rebound, my sports drink with 100 nutrients in it. And I'm going to have cheese and fruit for lunch with my Rebound. And then tonight for dinner, I'm going to have a big steak cooked in a Chinese style.
Yeah, where my family is from is Lebanon, Kentucky. And every year they have a big country ham festival there. And country ham is a ham that is preserved with salt. You don't need to have all the dangerous preservatives in it. And I love it. So if you ever get to Kentucky, you got to check out the Country Ham Festival in Lebanon, Kentucky.
Absolutely. I grew up in Missouri. That's where we had the country hams too.
Yeah, country ham is preserved with salt.
With salt.
And city ham is preserved with sugar.
And nitrates.
Well, commercially nitrates. I'm talking about the original way you did it. All right. How do you cook steak Chinese style? That's from Clifton Poff. I have no idea what he means there.
Okay, what I need to do is get Dr. Milan on here next week and have her teach everybody how to cook a Chinese breakfast.
That would be an interesting show.
Yeah.
All right, Doc. I don't see any other questions coming in, so I do appreciate you being here again. I will get that information over to your publishers for the video and get the other video up on YouTube so we can get some information out there that's much needed. We're going to have probably a fairly large baby boom in the next 9 months because of this COVID thing and everybody being stuck at home and out of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to get the information out there on pregnancy. And that's why I'm going to get that up on YouTube right now. And
okay, well, thank you.
Get that out there.
Yeah, I've gotten more women pregnant than any other man in history. Okay, Solomon doesn't even come close.
But you didn't get to have the fun doing it.
No, this is all nutritionally, of course. Nutritionally.
All right, Dr. Wallach. Well, thank you again for jumping on here, and I will talk to you again very soon.
Okay, God bless and thank you so much.
God bless you too.
Bye-bye.
This has been the Prosperity RX podcast with Pharmacist Keith Abel. Prosperity RX, your prescription for health, wellness, and prosperity. If you found value in this episode, please share and go to Apple iTunes. Make a comment and give us a 5-star rating. Also subscribe to us on iTunes or on your favorite podcast platform. Prosperity RX can also be found on YouTube at youtube.com/Prosperity RX. Be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell so you'll be notified each time a new episode has been uploaded. Pharmacist Keith is also a business entrepreneur. He helps folks from all walks of life to start and run their own home-based business. If you'd like Keith to help you create and run your very own business, be sure to visit aimhighforsuccess.com. That's aimhighforsuccess.com. Leave your contact information and Keith will contact you personally. Once again, that's aimhighforsuccess.com. Thanks again for tuning in to the Prosperity RX podcast.